Trump calls on Republicans to end the filibuster to force an end to the shutdown. Image: President Trump called on Senate Republicans late Thursday to eliminate the filibuster to force an end to the government shutdown, a move that would strip away a deeply rooted Senate rule. The president said in a late-night Truth Social post, https://realdonaldtrump/11546645047642002, that it was time for GOP leaders to play their Trump card and get rid of the long-standing rule that means most Senate legislation needs 60 votes to pass, rather than a simple majority. Republicans hold 53 of the 100 seats in the Senate. Democrats have repeatedly blocked a measure allowing funding for the government this month, as they argue that expiring subsidies tied to the Affordable Care Act must also be reinstated. Senate GOP leaders have shown reluctance to make further changes to the filibuster. Both parties have sought to erode https://www.nytimes.com/2025/US/politics/Republicans change rules nominees the filibuster in recent years, but have stopped far short of eliminating it. Many Republicans fear that invoking the nuclear option with changes to the filibuster could come back to haunt them if Democrats regain control of Congress. Earlier this month, Senator John Thune, Republican of South Dakota and the majority leader, dismissed https://www.politico.com/liveupdates/2025-10/09/Congress/shutdown/filibuster nuclear option. The idea of changing the filibuster in order to end the shutdown, saying the White House hadn't put pressure on him to do so. The president made his demand as a lapse in funding for anti-poverty programs, https://times.com, 2025-27. U.S. politics, shutdown SNAP food stamps aid, loomed, and Americans shopping for plans on the federal health insurance marketplace were set to see price increases. https://times.com/interactive, 2025-10, upshot, Obamacare subsidies, new prices, HTML. Air traffic controller shortage causes delays in Orlando and disruptions elsewhere. Image: air traffic controller absences delayed or temporarily halted operations at airports on Thursday, as the Trump administration warned of worsening disruptions while workers go without pay. The worst of the staffing interruptions was at Orlando International Airport, where the Federal Aviation Administration warned in an advisory Thursday evening that for a period of time, no arrivals will be able to land as there will be no certified traffic controllers available. By Thursday night, the airport was reporting average delays of about 2 hours and 40 minutes, with some flights delayed for nearly 12 hours and several canceled. As interruptions unfolded in Orlando, John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York City entered a ground stop for certain flights because of insufficient air traffic staffing, capping a day of delays and suspended operations because of storms. https://com/2025/NY region/NY floods Brooklyn basement death.html. And controller shortages at Ronald Reagan National Airport outside Washington caused delays through the afternoon and evening. The delays and their ripple effects along the East Coast followed a warning that Vice President J.D. Vance and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy had issued hours before of impending disaster if the government shutdown continued into November. The holiday travel season and the worsening winter weather, they argued, would increase the demands on air traffic controllers, just as working without pay could become untenable. The American people are already suffering, and the suffering is going to get a lot worse, Vice President J.D. Vance said on Thursday, insisting that Mr. Trump had tried to do everything in his power to make the shutdown as unpainless as possible. Comey attacks perjury and obstruction charges in new motions. Image: lawyers for James B. Comey, the former FBI director, sought on Thursday to dismiss the perjury and obstruction charges against him, arguing that federal prosecutors botched the indictment by misusing the grand jury process and by accusing him of telling a lie that he never actually told. The motions, filed in federal district court in Alexandria, Virginia, added to the panoply of legal challenges that Mr. Comey's defense team has already raised against the indictment. Mr. Comey, who has long been a critic of President Trump, was charged last month under extraordinary circumstances, https://2025/09/politics/Trump/Comey JusticeDepartment.html. After Mr. Trump ousted the career U.S. attorney who was reluctant to file a criminal case and installed an inexperienced loyalist in his place. Last week, in their opening round of legal briefs, https://2025/10/20/US/politics/James Comey lawyers.html. The lawyers argued that the Trump administration had brought the charges as an act of vindictive retribution and also contested the appointment of the hand-picked prosecutor, Lindsay Halligan, who secured the indictment on her fourth day on the job. The new filings gave Judge Michael S. Nachmanoff, who is overseeing the case, 2 additional reasons to throw out the charges, both of them related to the legal viability of the indictment. The lawyers also asked Judge Nachmanoff to force the government to provide them with what is known as a bill of particulars, a document that would add details to the bare-bones charges Mr. Comey is facing and describe with more specificity how prosecutors believe he broke the law. The 2-page indictment accuses Mr. Comey of lying to and obstructing Congress during a hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee on September 30, 2020. https www. In one of their motions, Mr. Comey's lawyers attacked the very substance of those allegations, saying that Senator Cruz's questions were fundamentally ambiguous and that Mr. Comey's response to them was literally true, and so could not form the basis of a perjury charge. Mr. Cruz's questions, the lawyers argued, suggested that he was asking about whether Mr. Comey had authorized Andrew McCabe, who once served as his deputy at the FBI, to leak information to the news media. Prosecutors have since clarified that they believe Mr. Comey lied about a different former FBI employee altogether, Daniel C. Richman. Moreover, the lawyers said Mr. Comey's answer to Mr. Cruz was not a detailed, direct response, but was instead a terse reply in which he said he stood by previous testimony he had given 3 years earlier when he was asked similar questions in a different congressional hearing. That, his lawyers wrote, was a literally true statement, regardless of whether the prior testimony was itself truthful. They added, fundamental to any false statement charge are both clear questions and false answers. Neither exists here. In their second motion, the lawyers homed in on Ms. Halligan herself, a former personal lawyer to Mr. Trump, who was handling her first criminal case when she appeared in front of the grand jury seeking to indict Mr. Comey. Ms. Halligan, they added, is a former insurance lawyer who lacks any prosecutorial experience. Substantively, the lawyers accused Ms. Halligan of committing irregularities so severe and pervasive in front of the grand jury that they likely prejudiced the grand jurors' narrow decision to indict. They reminded Judge Nachmanoff of some of her rookie errors, pointing out how she had kept the grand jurors in the courthouse well past normal business hours, after they failed to endorse one of the 3 original counts she was seeking. The lawyers also noted that Ms. Halligan had confusingly signed 2 different versions of the indictment. As further evidence that the grand jury process was potentially tainted, the lawyers said that the FBI agent who testified to the grand jurors might have improperly shared privileged communications between Mr. Comey and one of his lawyers. All available information regarding Ms. Halligan's first ever grand jury presentation smacks of irregularity, the lawyers wrote. It is virtually unheard of for a brand new prosecutor to make her first grand jury presentation alone, without the supervision and guidance of an experienced prosecutor to ensure the absence of factual and legal errors. The prosecutors handling the case, both of whom were brought in from North Carolina, after Ms. Halligan was unable to find anyone in the Eastern District of Virginia to do the job, are scheduled to respond to the defense's motions over the next 2 weeks. A hearing has been set for November 13th to consider the challenge to Ms. Halligan's appointment. It will be heard by a visiting judge from South Carolina, Cameron McGowan Curry, who has agreed to combine Mr. Comey's attack on the appointment with that from another Trump adversary charged by Ms. Halligan. Letitia James, the New York Attorney General.